Okay, good evening, everybody. We've got the wonderful Natalie from The Lone Parent again for another expert meetup for us this evening for everything to do with finances. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Natalie and we'll take it away from there. Thanks, Natalie. Lovely to have you again.
Thank you, and you're welcome. It's lovely to be here. Hi, everyone. As Susanna said, my name's Natalie. I'm going to share my screen this time round. I've done a... could you disable the screen sharing for me, please, Susanna? Thank you.
I can indeed, yeah. All sorted for you.
Thank you. Okay, can everyone see my screen? I don't want to present and record though. Just present will do. Okay, so today I'm talking about financial planning as a single parent. I feel planning first before you start your financial freedom journey is really important. That's where you put your strategy. It's like a compass, you know exactly where you're going to. So a bit about myself. My story. So the reason why I started my financial freedom journey is I was homeless with 2 young children back 10 years ago now. Found myself homeless. I was in 30k worth of debt. I lost my flat. That was due to financial abuse that I was experiencing from my kid's dad. I was also on benefits as well. And I was just finding things really, really difficult being in the hostel. I didn't know how to budget. I was really bad with managing finances. I didn't know how to save. I'd save for like 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks later I'll be back into my savings again, spending it on something else. And a lot of the debt was due to the financial abuse, but also, you know, I have to take my part in it as well. Like, I wasn't great at managing my finances whatsoever. And I was also on, when I became homeless, I had to go on benefits as well. So during that time, while I was in the hostel for about 3 years, I learned how to manage my finances. I went on this personal finance course. I learned how to budget. It was really basic, but I think I just made a commitment to myself that I just no longer wanted to be in this situation anymore. And so I went on a personal finance course. I learned how to budget, how to manage my finances, how to save, how to pay bills on time, stuff like that. But at the end of my budget, like, I always kind of, you know, it was really tight. I couldn't spend it. Didn't have any money to spend on anything else other than my debts. It was really tight. And so I created a side hustle, literally, like, it was just making do whatever I had. So at the time I was like creating my own natural products for hair and skin for my children, because on the market there wasn't anything for our Afro hair. And so I was importing it from Ghana, Jordan, and clay from China. And so I'd make products and people would use it, my friends and family. And then from there, I had a market store in Spitalfields Market, and I went to loads of like events, and that's kind of how I side hustled, how I was able to really clear down my debts and have some disposable income to have a little bit of fun, like go take my kids to the beach, just literally changing their surroundings so they wasn't in the hostel all the time. So that's just a bit about my story and how I got into financial freedom. And while I was in the hostel, well, the first year, like, it was really, really harsh, really hard, and I couldn't even think beyond a day. But the moment I started my side hustle and I started making a bit more income, and I had a bit of more disposable income, well, I had more disposable income, didn't have any in the beginning, I was able to see beyond just the next 24 hours. And then I started thinking about financial planning and what I wanted my next 5 years to look like. Now, I didn't, the next slides where I tell you about the next steps of what I achieved, I didn't achieve that in 5 years. It was a lot longer than 5 years. that I had that it took me to achieve it. But because I had a plan, I knew exactly where to go. I knew exactly what I needed to do. And yeah, so if you see me looking down, I'm just looking down at my notes. So anyway, as I said, it took me longer than 5 years to create financial stability, because that's what this plan was really about. And I'm grateful to myself for having some of the things set up already before I became homeless. So for instance, I already had a pension. I'd been deposited in my pension since I was 19 years of age. So retirement was never been and will not be an issue for me. However, creating investments for my children, I started much later in their childhood, and I don't regret doing so. And I'll tell you why further on. So let's start. So the first one is, which I always speak about, I guess, in most of my meetups in Frollo, is to have an emergency fund. And your emergency fund is your security. It's your safety net against unplanned job losses and any unexpected costs. You may classify it as emergencies. Now, as always, I always say the rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. I think it's really hard in this climate. I would say 12 months, but I know it's really hard in this climate to do 12 months worth, to save 12 months worth of expenses in your emergency fund. However, if you can think of ways to create extra income to fill that emergency fund, then I'm all for it. And as a single mom myself, a six-month emergency fund for me makes me feel like I'm financially stable. And really that's because I've analysed my previous costs. I've analysed what usually happens, my expenses, my unexpected expenses, what my emergencies are. I am really bad at life admin. And so I will miss dates and have to pay a little bit more than if I had got it on time, like sometimes parking tickets, or my kids are also bad at life admin, and so they will tell me lastminute.com about any activities that I need to pay straight away. And so that would usually come out of the emergency fund, purely because as well, they're home educated, so I outsource their education. So anything that comes up, I really do need to pay. And I usually just top up my emergency fund, whatever. Yeah, so whatever I've taken out, I usually top it back up. With that being said, as I said before, we're in a recession and it has been predicted to last 2 years. So an emergency fund with 12 months worth of expenses during this time is ideal. However, it's totally up to you and what you feel secure in. I think if you're having problems filling it up due to income issues, there are loads of groups on Facebook in terms of like side hustles and how to make money. I would start joining those free groups, finding ideas on how you can do a side hustle, and just get motivation and inspiration from those people who are already doing it. Because that's kind of what I did, especially when I was in the hostel. Like I had nothing, so my side hustle was literally, okay, what am I doing? What do people talk to me about all the time? And it was always about the products that I was making just for my family, and I give little people little tubs and they'd love it and it would work. And I said, okay, I'm just going to go with it. And even then there was like obstacles, because to mix all the products together and to get it tested, it means I had to pay, at the time it's between £300 and £500. I didn't have that money, so I had to come back, reassess. And what I did was, you know, instead of selling it as a finished product, I'm just going to sell it as ingredients. So I'd sell shea butter by itself, I'd sell coconut oil by itself, I'd sell the African black soap by itself, I'd sell bentonite clay by itself. So I'd sell these things by itself because I didn't need to get it checked out. I just need to make sure there was a label on it and an expiry date. So now I've just missed out. I didn't have to pay for those high costs because I couldn't afford it. Then I was able to get quicker on the market store and be able to sell. So, you know, I think you have to come with a really different perspective. If you're coming with a perspective of there's nothing I can do, then there is nothing you can do. If you come with a perspective of, do you know what, I need to do something, I'm going to find out, I'm going to do whatever I can, then something's always going to come in, an opportunity is always going to appear. You just, obviously you need to have to put work into it, but there's always a way. And another thing I always say as well to not listen to the narratives about single parents and statistics. I learned from a very young age to avoid the magazines, the newspapers, the news. They don't do anything for you mentally, and they keep you in a state of that you can't do more for yourself. So I will just say that. And also as well, when I first started building my emergency fund, oh my God, it was so depressing. I could only afford like £5 a month. But I realized at the moment and at the time I was like, what's the point? But I just kept doing it. And then when my income changed, I was able to increase my income and I was able to put more in. I realized that what I was doing, it was never about the amount. It was about the consistency. It was about the habit of saving for a rainy day. It was about investing in myself. It was about paying myself first and just getting into that habit and being consistent about it, no matter the amount. When my income increased, I didn't do lifestyle inflation. I didn't say, right, I'm going to go and get this. I'm going to go and get clothes. No, the first thing I said was, I'm going to put it in my emergency fund because I have a goal to reach. And once I reach that goal, then I can move on to other things in my plan. So as I said, it's unrealistic to think you can get to a 6-month or 12-month or even a 3-month work fully funded emergency fund overnight. It does take time. And you'll also want to decide whether your emergency fund will cover bare bones or whether it covers luxuries. So back when I was homeless, it was literally bare bones. It was the rent, it was food, and rent and food and my car that I had at the time. Now it's rent, food, bills, the usual, my children's tuition fees, and then that maybe a luxury would be like a day out. I would involve that in my emergency fund, but nothing more than that. I don't want to feel comfortable. I want to be like, okay, something's happened, and it will, I don't know, say if something happened, maybe I need to take some time off. Like in this last year summer, I wanted to take the 6 to 8 weeks off. So that's what I did. I had emergency fund to cover that. But as well, I had clients. So I did a strategy where I still had clients coming in. But it just meant that because I took so long off, I knew once I come back in September, it would take me some time to gain clients. So I had an emergency fund to cover that. But it was just to cover the basics and a little bit more, just so I wouldn't feel comfortable and I would stay on task on my strategy. I think you've got to be self-aware and really know yourself, your spending habits. The next one on the list is your retirement. As I said before in the beginning, I've been paying into a pension since I was 19 years old, just blindly. Like at the time I was working in a bank and everyone was paying into a pension. So that's what I did. I didn't really ask. And then I think in 2008, during the first recession, I wanted to get into accountancy. So I had my first ever accountant job at the end of 2008. And the finance director, he was like amazing. He like sat down with me and got me a financial advisor for free and really told me about like how important it is to pay in a pension, why it's important to do it now. He was like, you know, when you're in your 20s, even though I had my daughter, you know, you're paying to your pension more now in your 20s than any other stage of your life because of the responsibilities that you will have later on. And so that's kind of really what I did. I really took notice of my pension. However, it's only been since I was homeless that I really, not that I stopped paying in my pension, but I kept going on. But really the last 5 years that I really got really involved in my pension because I got into investing at that time. So it wasn't just important me really taking making use of the employee contribution, employee sacrifice, but now I was going into my pension and looking at the funds that my company had allocated and changing it and making it more realistic for me. So what I'm talking about here is investment portfolio. So if you have a company, if you have a pension and it's with a company, they will have it with a certain provider. It could be Life in General, it could be Scottish Widows. I don't know any more on the top of my head, but it will be with a pension provider. And what you can do, you can log in, you can see what they've chosen for you. They would have chosen some kind of pension fund for you. And from there, you can kind of see how it's performing, what the expected end goal is. And if you've got any knowledge on investment, invest in the stocks and shares market and how it works, then you can change it. And so with my pension, the more I've got into my financial freedom journey, I still put in my pension, but I don't put as much, because I know that the government, I think it's next year after, they're increasing the pension age again. And I would like to retire before the pension age. And so you're unable to touch your pension before your retirement age. So you would have to think about other accounts, so like stocks and shares ISA, be a good one. If you're below the age of 40, you can open up a lifetime ISA and save in there as well. Each tax year you can save around 20k. And for me personally, I do a stocks and shares ISA. I do it with one of the stocks and shares providers. I don't pay for someone to do my shares and take care of it. If you do that, you'll realize you have to pay a lot of fees, and those fees are coming out of the money that you are investing and making from those investments. So I do it myself. I'm a passive investor. I choose the funds myself, and I look at them maybe definitely once, maybe twice a year. And I just keep putting money in there every month. And the reason why I do that is I have emotional detachment from the funds. If you keep looking at your funds, you'll get, the funds are going up and down. So I don't know, before, when the stock market had gone down recently and everyone was pulling out their money, and so you're losing money from there. And the smart people who have done their research, like myself, would have been paying for more stocks. We'd be making the most of the stock market crashing. It means we're buying stocks and shares for really cheap and taking advantage of the rise. So we'd buy them for cheap, and then they would increase in price, so that when I'm ready to sell them, I've made money. So that's what I was thinking about in your retirement fund. Think about your pension, think about the benefits, so your employer contribution, how much they're contributing, if they're part of a salary sacrifice scheme. So a salary sacrifice scheme is when you, say if you're earning over a certain amount. So for single parents, I know if you're earning over 50k, you're not entitled to child benefit. But if your company has opted into the salary sacrifice scheme, then it means that you can use some of your salary to put into your pension and reduce your pay. So instead of saying you earn 50k, you could say you earn, I don't know, 46, 47k, and that 3k. So say you earn 47k, so that 3k would go into your pension. And so that means you still be entitled to child benefit. Unfortunately, it's unfair on lone parents, because if you was a couple and one was earning 40k, another one was earning, I don't know, 30k, they have a joint household income of 70k, and they'd still be entitled to child benefit. So the ways you still be entitled to child benefit is to take advantage of the salary sacrifice scheme, but not all employers opt into it. And also when you do that, you pay less NI, they pay less NI as well. So the next one, when you're planning, is investing for your children. So as with anything else, investing in your children's future is a personal journey. And I always say it would be wise to start as early as possible, but life, as I'm well aware, doesn't always end up like that. So for me, I only set up a savings account for my children about 5 years ago. And I opened up a junior ISA. So they also invest in the stock market as well. And the reason why I started later is because my main priority was ensuring that I had set myself up first. I don't want to be a financial burden to my children. And as I was going along the way in my personal finance journey, I was also teaching them as well. So I may not be investing in them financially in terms of actually deposit money into my account, but I was investing in them with knowledge, and they understand how to manage their finances. So once I had increased my income, and I had sorted out the foundations that I needed to sort out, then I could invest in everyone else's future, aka my children. So as I said before, I immediately opened up a junior stocks and shares ISA for both of them. And not only did I invest in shares for them, but I also taught them how to invest too. So whenever I put money in their accounts as cash, they will go in and they will choose which funds they want to do. They will usually always choose like the Vanguard ones, the Vanguard funds, because it's already built for you already. And it's also these companies that they understand, like Microsoft, Facebook, Google, so those companies, they already understand what they are. So also a tip as well, like don't get bogged down in wishing you had started earlier. As they say, yes, the best time to start was then, but the next best time to start is now. So here are some of the ways you can invest for your children. As I said before, you can do a junior ISA, or so a junior ISA is an individual savings account, is a tax-free savings account that parents or legal guardians can open on behalf of their child. And the account has an annual limit, which is set by the government and can be invested in cash, stocks and shares, or a combination of both. And the child can access the funds as soon as they turn 18, or they can roll over the account and turn it into a normal stocks and shares ISA after they're 18. The next one you can do is a child trust fund. And this is a long-term savings account for children born between the 1st of September 2002 and the 2nd of January 2011. And the account was automatically set up by the government. I think I had one for my daughter. And it's for eligible for children, and then can be invested in cash or stocks and shares as well. And the child again can access the funds once they turn 18. The next investment you can use for your children is investment trusts. It's a type of investment company that pulls money from investors and invests in a range of assets such as shares, bonds, and property. Investment trusts can be a good option for long-term investments, as they tend to provide a steady income and can offer good returns. And the other one is premium bonds, and they're a government-backed savings product that offers the chance to win tax-free prizes every month. And the bonds do not pay interest, but instead they offer a chance to win prizes between £25 and £1 million. And then there's OICs, which are unit trusts and open-ended investment companies. So OEICs. So these unit trusts and OICs, they are similar to investment trusts, but differ in the way they are structured. Both invest in a range of assets and managed by a fund manager. And unit trusts are divided into units, while OICs are divided into shares. Yeah. For me, though, I always do junior ISA because I like to do it myself. It's passive, it's less fees. And there is a book, I don't think I've got it here. It's called Simple Investing. And what I like about it is by a UK author. So everything's about UK, not about US. And actually that's one of the tools I use to learn about investing. And that's how I've managed to do it myself. The next milestone you want to achieve in your financial planning is being debt-free. Now, what they don't like to tell you is that not all debt is bad debt. It's the high interest debt that is killing. And that is the one you really want to focus on. But stuff like mortgage or really low interest debt, like I think people don't realize that the rich really leverage the debt. They always use debt to make purchases and stuff like that. And they use that actual money for projects. And that's because the interest is so low, and they can use their money and use their money to make more money, which then overrides the interest that they're paying on the debt. So as I say, getting out of high interest debt is one of the hardest milestones to achieve in our financial freedom journey, because like, you want to get, where you want to get to, but your old behaviors are still holding you back, and you need to sort them out before you can move forward. And this is how high interest debt works. Myself, I've been in debt twice, but the second time was the hardest. And I think because I was homeless and everything was just so stressful. But I managed to come through. So high interest debt is your store cards, is your credit cards, catalog accounts, overdrafts, etc. They have ridiculous interest rates, and the quicker you pay them off, the better you'll be. When clearing your debts, there are a few methods that are great for tackling these. So the first one is the debt avalanche method, which I've mentioned before numerous times on meetups. And this is for someone who is money motivated. And a lot of us are not, we are really emotional about our money. And this is where you put your debts in order of highest to smallest based on the interest rate. And what you do is you will pay the minimum and a little extra on the first one. And then on the rest of the debts, you'll just pay minimum payment. And you will do that until the first one is paid off. And then when you reach the second one, then you do interest rate plus a little bit more. And that little bit more will come from the amount you would have been paying on the first debt before it was paid off. And you just go through your debts in that way. Then you have the snowball method. And that one is when you put your debts from lowest to highest based on the amount that you owe. And on the lowest one, which is at the top, you will pay the minimum payment plus a little bit extra. And then the rest of them, you'll just pay minimum payment, and you'll do it like that until the first one is paid off. Then with the second one, you'll pay minimum payment plus what you would have been paying the first one on, and then you pay minimum payment on the rest. And that's why it's called a snowball method effect. You just do that until your debts are cleared. The last one, which I've made up myself, is the one that gives you most anxiety. Because not everyone is so logic. Like, money has this energy that we put on it, and it's always emotional. People are usually scared of money, and that's due to their core money beliefs from their childhood. How they saw their parents handle money, how they saw their parents talk about money. And as children, we soak that up, and then we start doing it in our adult life, unaware, unfortunately. And so with the anxiety one, I always say, like, if you have a debt that's giving you the most anxiety, doesn't matter how much it is, that's the one you should be tackling first. And so I would pay the minimum payment and a bit more, and then the rest you just pay minimum payment. But I would also say as well, if it's giving you anxiety and you've got creditors calling you, to always call the creditors up. For me, I didn't realize how much power I had, especially when I was homeless, how much power I had over the creditors. It's not a necessity payment, the debt. It's not bills, it's not food. And so you can go back to them and say, actually, I need to freeze this, and I can't pay this amount that I'm paying, and this is all I can afford. They usually send you like a expenses spreadsheet that shows what's coming in and what's going out, and you just fill it in and have that back up what you're saying you can only afford to pay, and send it back to them. Every few months, they will write to you or email you or call you and ask you, has anything changed? Do you want to pay a bit more? And you can just say, no, I don't want to pay any more. Nothing's changed for me right now. And I didn't realize how much power I had at the time, but don't let these creditors dictate how you should be, where your money should be spent. So yeah, and you can call your creditors and request for interest rates to be frozen or refunded. You can write to them. You can even say, if you can prove to them that they lent you money And even though on your credit report, it showed your income, it showed that you wasn't able to afford such a big amount, you can get them to freeze the interest as well. The next one is life insurance. And that is like, I don't know, for me, it's one of the most important ones for me. And I've always had life insurance, even when I was crap with money, because it was just really, really important, because I was always worried, like, if anything happened to me, what would happen to my children in terms of finances. Like, I know I had a will set out, so I knew who they would stay with, but I wanted that person to not be in survival mode financially for my children. I think grieving to some people, to a lot of people, is a privilege, and I wanted the person to look after my children to not have to worry about finances for my children. So I took out a life insurance policy, and you can go straight to the provider, or what I like to do is I like to go to a broker and I get them to search the best life insurance policy for me. Now, there's two types of life insurance policies. There's the term life insurance and there's the whole life insurance. So the term life insurance policies provide coverage just for a specific time, usually around 10 or 20 years time. And if you pass away during this period, then there'll be a payout made to the beneficiaries. However, if you do not die, if you die outside the time period, then there won't be a guaranteed payout. That's why some people like to do a whole of life insurance policy. Doesn't matter when you die. Even if you die in your old age, there will be a guaranteed payout. However, this is more expensive than the term life insurance one. And personally, for me, I've just chosen term life one because I have a plan, I have a goal, and after a certain period of time, I know my investments and whatever else will take care of it, and I won't need a life insurance. However, right now, what I have, because I'm self-employed, if you're self-employed too, it'd be good to look at critical illness one. So if anything happened to you, you was ill, and which meant you wasn't able to run your business, or even if you're employed as well, and you really have to look at your employer handbook and see what your employer offers, because if they don't do long-term sick pay or anything like that, I'm not sure what the rules are currently, but if they don't, then you've got critical illness in your life insurance policy that will cover you for those sicknesses. And also as well, like, I've had some really good employers where they actually provided life insurance while I was working there as well. So sometimes that's a good thing to look at, just so that you're not having to pay out. Look, if your employer offers life insurance, and take it. And usually it's free. They're the ones that's funding it. And also what I would say, that it's important to have these conversations with the person. So if you've written a real will, and so like for me, if anything happened to me, my children wouldn't be with their dad, they'll be with someone else, and I've written a will for it, and I have a folder with documents with everything in it. So my bank accounts, my investments, my life insurance policies, mine and my children's birth certificates. So if anything happened to me, that person knows what folder it's in, and they also know where it's stored as well. It's really good to have these conversations. So the person who would take care of my children, if anything was to happen to me before they reach adulthood, they know the amount of payout, they know what I've written in my will. Also as well, in a life insurance policy, you can get funeral costs. So that's covered as well in my life insurance. Just so that the person doesn't have to worry about anything. I've written out a set of instructions of how I want to die, of what I want my funeral to be. And so I know, like, these are like morbid conversations, but these are conversations that we really need to be having. I've even had them with my children as well, so that they are aware, because I want them to still maintain a certain lifestyle. And I know that the person you know, it's difficult for a person to go from no children to all of a sudden have 2 children overnight. And so I want them, and finances, just for me, like when my brother died last year, my grand died last year, it was finances, not knowing how you're going to bury the person, the funeral, because things are so unexpected and people haven't put their affairs in order. And so just seeing that, I just thought I never want that for my family if they had to bury me prematurely. So I think it's really important to have that as part of your plan. Think about the cover, what cover you would have, if that would be enough. And also as well, with some of these providers like Life in General, you can get them to write in a trust as well for the payout for your children. So have a look at that as well. So yes, I am done here. That's it. I've come to the end. If anyone has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Oh, thanks. As always, fabulous. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to put forward to Natalie? You can either unmute yourself and ask if you want to, or you could pop it into the chat. No problem at all. I'll tell you what, that again rings alarm bells. You always like to do that to me, don't you, Natalie? Is that I remember when I was married that I had a will and things in place and all of that kind of thing. And it just brings to life again, and life insurance and all of that. And it brings to life where I kind of stopped everything, and through my divorce, now I really need to refocus and look at those things, because like you say, they are so key important as a lone parent, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. They are really important. And you know, sometimes we don't always have the best co-parenting relationships as well. Some of us are parallel parenting. I am. So it's really important that these things are put in place. Yeah, and you're having these conversations.
Yeah, and I think again, it's like you say, isn't it, to look into it, or to get a broker to help you look into it if it all is a bit too confusing sometimes.
Yeah, because for me it was like, so that's why I just got a broker, and then he was able to sit down and ask me questions that I didn't really think of. And then it was like things that it put things into perspective for me. And then I kind of knew, okay, what would a good figure be? What do I want? And also like the critical illness that covers me now. Like, you know, I'm running my own business. If anything was to happen, God forbid, but you know, I receive some sort of financial help, and I'm not dependent on benefits.
No. And I think again, and I know that you've mentioned it in our other expert meetups, that anyone that's listening this evening, if you haven't joined any of the ones before with Natalie, they are on our YouTube channel. So you could re-watch them if you wanted to, or watch them for the first time. But there was a really good message in there as well, is that when we become single parents and non-financially secure, it's really scary and it's worrying. And then some of us will have, excuse me, the added benefit of benefits. And then we were talking about before, wasn't it? But then when you draw away from that, it does become quite scary, because you think, well, could I really manage without? And how do you manage without? And again, that's where the side hustles and looking at other things to create an income for yourself is what you mentioned before as well, hadn't we?
Yeah. And also as well, like upskilling, because there was a time where, yes, I was side hustling, but at that time I wasn't in full employment because I was just going through court and stuff. I just couldn't handle it at the time when I had my kids and being homeless as well. But when my son, when I did finally go back to work, and then I was studying because I hadn't finished my accountancy qualification, and I still haven't. But at the time I was like studying module by module and doing my exams. I didn't have the time to do a side hustle. I was working full time, I was studying, and I still have my children. And so I upskilled. Like I moved jobs every year to increase my income. And every time I did a new job, I would give myself 3 months to really get into my job, observe the team, see where I can be an asset. Because I knew, yes, being an asset would benefit them, but also benefit me, because now they're going to teach me stuff that I can add on my CV, and then I could ask for more money for. And even though I didn't have the qualification behind it, I was like, well, I have the experience and I'm currently studying. And employers love that. And so I was able to always negotiate a good salary, to the point where in 2020, I was able to negotiate an almost 6-figure salary in the middle of a pandemic. So upskilling, if you cannot, because I understand with single parents, like our time is just stretched. So
yes, stretched to everywhere, isn't it?
Right. And we're doing so many jobs. Running a home is full-time, managing our kids full-time, and then we've got full-time jobs on top of that. It's so difficult. And so I'm for side hustles if you have the mental capacity, but if you haven't, upskill. Like, look at your job. Where can you increase your skills? I had one client and she got her employer to pay for her CBD training. So there were things like that, because she knew if she had that behind her, then she can leave and get a better salary elsewhere. I think a lot of single parents are worried about perks, like, well, I can come in a bit late because I've got the school run and they know me and stuff like that. And so I used to go to interviews and I used to say to them, my children are really important. Working is important, but my children are really important. And so I need to leave her at 5. And I can only start at 9, because I'm not willing to put them in breakfast club any earlier than 7:30, 8 o'clock. I'm just not willing to do it.
No.
And I think if you're forthcoming in the interview, and for me, I'm great with interviews, and I always come with the right questions, and I come with a notebook that I don't mind open in front of me. But I just think that if you're good with interviews, but you're also forthcoming in the interview, then they are more likely to agree with you. I don't like the way of, just agree to everything they say, and then after probation, then let them know.
No.
Yeah, I just think it's deceitful. I know there's like some people who were suggesting this, but it's just not the right way of being. Just be upfront in the interview and don't be scared about it. But upskilling is another way that I think we as single parents should be doing if you're employed and you don't have the capacity to take on a side hustle as well.
Yeah, that's amazing advice, because that's what it's like, isn't it? You just feel so overwhelmed with time, and you might then really want to do it or have a great idea, and then I'm too exhausted to kind of full tuition to do that. So for any of us who are employed, that you can lean rather on your employee to upskill you. Then, that's a brilliant way to think of it. It really is, rather than I found myself the other day saying to my other employer, I was like, yeah, and I really like it because I can finish at 5 and then I can go to the school, and then I'm like, and then they annoy me in 10 minutes later. I'm like, oh, what are you doing? But it's a funny one, isn't it? It's that fine tuning. It's that leap, taking the jump, whatever it is. That's a bit hard sometimes, isn't it? I think I have to just digest it for a bit longer.
For me as well, because everyone would say to me, like my mentors would say, you need to stay a minimum of 2 years in employed because it'll look bad on your CV. And I was just like, F that. There's a strong calling for me to do this. And I've always said, like, the commitment is to myself. Like when it comes to working for anyone else, is to myself first. And so I took that leap. And I remember speaking to a recruitment agency. He said, no. I said, with your experience, you're fine. You've got a nice CV. And I paid someone to do my CV as well. I swear, you've got to know your strengths and weaknesses, because I'm rubbish with writing stuff like that down. I just paid someone to do my CV for me. And
And do you know what? That's a really good idea as well. Obviously, you always have great ideas, but that's a really good idea, because sometimes you forget, where you've been so consumed by becoming a single parent, managing everything, all the emotional upset, the financial upset, everything that comes with you forget how good you are at the other things, or the things
Yes.
before, or how this has made you stronger eventually and brought you into a different manifestation, however you want to look at it.
Yes.
And we forget the tools that we carry along the way with that could then give us something else. And we do forget that. We do.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I'm back then, I'm getting better, but back then I was not great at selling myself. Like,
Yeah.
I can talk well and like in interviews do really well and present myself well, but on paper I just found it really difficult. And what was good about that, this CV writer, she spoke to me on the phone, she asked me what I've been doing, especially when I was coming back to work and I'd not been in work for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah,
You know,
sure.
she was able to kind of ask me what I did, what I was all about, my side hustling, you know, what I was doing, and then what I was doing previously as an accountant, assistant accountant. She was able to put that in a CV for me, make it very current.
Yeah.
And that's what helped me, because that's something that I'm not able to do. So I feel like if you can outsource, work on your strengths, know what your weaknesses are, and those weaknesses, if you don't afford it, okay, work on them. But if you can, like, you know, outsource.
No,
Frees up time.
yeah, unbelievably so. Does anybody that is on mute, does anybody have anything that they would like to ask? It's no problem if you don't. Natalie is fantastic. She gives you such great advice and understanding, so you can just digest it and then hopefully join us on another one where you could do a list of questions to join the next one next month, and we'll do that. Isn't it? And we'll just bombard you with questions.
Yes.
So just to sort of like end there with a huge thank you always, Natalie, for your amazing insight and to be very vulnerable in a sense to tell you that your journey, but it's just so inspirational and it just helps so many and has done within the community as well. So thank you so very much. Again, Natalie generally does an expert meetup for us monthly. So I'll make sure that that's all up to date on our app and in the meetups. And like I say, honestly, if there are any questions, or once you finished in this meetup and thought, oh, I wish I'd asked that, or tomorrow you might sort of think of something, then come along to the next one, and then you are very welcome, and Natalie will definitely be able to answer any questions that you have. But we've got some lovely thank yous for you, Natalie, as always. So thank you all very much taking up your time on a Wednesday evening to join myself and Natalie. And again, Natalie, thank you so very much. And I look forward to seeing you next month. I hope you all have a great evening, and I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Thanks.